Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us during Eco3 Earth Week, which is a week-long celebration of our community's commitment to sustainability with a lineup of events, learning, and service. Each day this week, we will be leading a series of virtual webinars, each focusing on different actions for climate resiliency, including actions for business, environmental justice, solar, and climate throughout our neighborhood. Each of these items are outlined as important actions in the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan. Businesses in our neighborhood can influence significant change and be a part of climate solutions. Today's conversation will be facilitated by Equilibrium3's CEO, Jodi. She will be joined by owner of Frost River, Chris Benson, Director of Facilities at Essentia Health, Dan Cebelinski, and Director of Product Operations at Maurices, Medina Mercer. Today's conversation will be recorded and uploaded on YouTube. Thank you to our panelists and facilitators. We want to also thank our sponsors and partners for Earth Week and for their dedication to an equitable and sustainable future. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Jodi, I will pass it off to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Kristen. Very excited to hear the presentation today. We have online with us today, Laura Wedge, who is with Eco3. She actually was the chief author working with a number of different organizations of the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan. And as we're going to start today's session by giving you a little bit of background on that and then move into our panelists focused on the business side of things. And let's see, are you seeing that screen? Yes, awesome. So the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan was coordinated by Equilibrium3 in partnership with the Duluth Climate and Energy Network with funding provided by the Clean Energy Resource Teams, which is part of the University of Minnesota. What we ended up doing is a process that really looked at all of the different kind of projects and planning that have occurred not only in our community, but looking at climate adaptation, climate mitigation, and the best actions that could be taken. And we ended up selecting Project Drawdown, which is an amazing work that looked at the science internationally, globally, as to what are the biggest actions that can be taken to truly impact our carbon emissions. And I always kind of give the example that if we were to talk about how we can do carbon emissions worldwide, one of the top 10 things that can change our carbon footprint right now, for example, is educating girls. And that's not something that when we think about climate action plans, say here in Duluth, we're thinking of. But internationally, that is a huge opportunity for us. What we ended up doing is we ended up downscaling the research that occurred on that international scale and put it very kind of localized to the city of Duluth. And when doing that, we really found that there were 4 areas of greatest GHG emissions that we should be focusing on. And that was our food and agriculture system, basically saying that our most impactful action that we can take is to develop a local and ecologically sound food system and the infrastructure that enables and encourages us to grow, process, and distribute the food that our community, residents, and our businesses need. On transportation, really prioritizing our street design and modes of transportation that would be on the zero carbon side with an emphasis on walking, biking, and public transportation, reducing our vehicle miles traveled. And one of our speakers today is actually joining us from New York, and you know, the transit systems and the normal assumptions people have for how they get around in New York is dynamically different than what we have here in Duluth. Looking at buildings, making our buildings more energy efficient, and then ensuring that they're fueled by clean and efficient energy. And that's something we'll also learn from one of our local speakers today. And then finally, looking at energy production. And we often talk about the idea of equitable deep decarbonization is this idea of electrifying everything and then taking the carbon out of our electricity, and how we can do that. And so looking at what and how we can do things like community-owned, locally produced clean energy. In thinking through this, if you go to equilibrium3.org/Duluth Climate Action, you're going to see that in each one of these categories, there are really 4 different levels of actions we talked about. We talked about kind of the individual learning you might want to have, individual actions that you can take, those actions that businesses and organizations can do. And that's what we're going to focus on today. And then finally, where and how can we come together to make some of those larger systemic changes at community or greater scale. And so when we look at business actions, you will, if you go into the climate action plan, you will see some very specific actions that can be taken on that business scale, along with the resources as to who's doing that or how you can do that at this local level. On the food and agriculture side, we do have things like Sign the Superior Compact, and that's about committing to purchasing food that is locally grown, et cetera. Things like businesses that do have lawn or other type of infrastructure, how are they providing that, et cetera. Under transportation, things like clean your sidewalks so that we have the accessibility, especially with, our April, May, June, July snowstorms, that kind of thing, so that we can have these other transportation options. Providing bike storage, maybe becoming a bike-friendly business. Looking at buildings, it's not just our residential structures, but in fact, it's really our commercial structures that are going to use kind of our most energy and have the largest carbon footprint. And so making sure that our businesses are part of the solution is really important on the building side. And then finally, looking at on the commercial side, what we can do to get to that electrify everything and decarbonize our electricity. So with that, today we're going to have, again, 3 different speakers. And the way that we're going to present this is we're going to start with kind of our most local speaker. And I kind of feel like I should lean back to my window here and wave because Chris Benson, the owner of Frost River, is actually joining us 3 blocks down on his roof and would love to kick it over to you so that we can learn more about the work that Frost River has done on the sustainability side and on the climate side. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Well, thanks, Jodi. Everyone, this isn't a background here. This is actually, like, the sun is right there. And I'm kind of looking down Superior Street. And I guess the place that I probably start with my sustainability side of things is just yesterday we were identified in the Star Tribune as being the trendy Lincoln Park. And as we see our area develop and regrow to taking these old buildings, and now you're starting to see what we have here. We have solar panels, and then looking out over on the Can of Worms project, another huge thing to do with transportation and making our area itself sustainable and continuing to be a growing area for jobs and people to have a living. But I guess as I stand above these solar panels here, they probably are a really good spot for me to start off talking of how our sustainability journey has really come along. I purchased Frost River was just a pile of stuff out in a pole barn about 45 minutes west of here back in 2009. And what we are a pack manufacturer, a bag manufacturer. We employ about a little over 50 people now between our building here, and then we have another building we purchased a few blocks down that does screen printing and embroidery. But part of my sustainability thing is really to try to employ and have jobs here in the Duluth area where people are able to find their way to work without having to drive too far, sometimes ride their bikes, walk, that sort of thing. As you see, the efforts that Equilibrium 3 is trying to do with the neighborhood in the area to build up housing, and it's a lot more attainable and achievable than one might think. But the main thing is with these panels, they have a weight themselves. And 100-year-old roof that's hot, that's letting heat out of it and snow melt off of it was not the optimal place for the solar panels to be. So we have a 40 kilowatt system here that operates all year long. The panels we have a 40 kilowatt system that we had up and installed and running in May of last year. These are the inverters that are inside of our building. And basically the way that it works, we're not an off-grid solution. We are on the grid. And as you can see here, Minnesota Power lines run out, and actually Minnesota Power is out there hooking up some of our other neighbors right now. There's guys in the buckets. But what happens with our system here is we are making power during the day. And we have switchgear down on the side of the building that makes it so that any demand that we have in the building is primarily coming off of this to start. And if there is more demand than we can produce off of our solar panels, then our meter goes and starts charging us from Minnesota Power. The inverse is appropriate as well. On times like during the weekends when we're not consuming power, running all of our sewing machines and equipment and that sort of thing, our meter actually goes the other way and spins backwards and sells power out on the grid, out through those lines that go out there to the bucket trucks. But since our installation last May, I guess the first thing that was kind of surprising was our first bill was actually a $10 credit back from the power company, which really was surprising. It'll be interesting to see if that happens again, but it also made me kind of feel good and say, oh, we're really on the right track now. But what ultimately has happened is for us to be able to have this power that's up there all the time, it really makes us feel good as a manufacturer and as a local member of the community in the fact that we are trying to minimize our footprint. And when we make bags that are meant for people to take outside and enjoy in the boundary waters or other areas in the outdoor world, it certainly resonates with our customer base as well that we are trying to be as sustainable as we can. So as I was saying, our production floor is up here, and we were just going through the actual inverters that happen. But was another interesting thing when I was up top, I talked about the weight of the actual panels and the weight of the snow load that goes on too. So we actually had to extend our steel infrastructure in our 100-year-old building in order to build a truss system up on top, which I kind of simulated here with this 2x4. But by going up and over like we did with an overbuild, we were able to add R50 insulation to our roof, which before was probably about R5 or something. So you can see this additional whole structure here. By going after the solar aspect of things, we were able to improve our overall energy efficiency as well. That additional insulation helps us both with heating and cooling. And I didn't show you up there when we were up on the floor, but from a production standpoint, we also have active windows, which with our old building, we didn't have windows that worked, but we have cross ventilation installed now, which allows us when the temperature swings in Duluth to be able to run natural air conditioning as opposed to forced in air conditioning as a manufacturer. So the sustainability thing is all the time. I'm showing here our quality inspection station, which it's lunchtime, so there's nobody there. Another little sustainability thing, we do 100% quality inspection on all of our products. And the reason we do that, lots of manufacturers just do nth manufacturing because statistically, you can pick up where you're going to have issues. But we really don't want to have any extra things shipping out around the world. Every day we're shipping stuff all around the world from Duluth that's made here. And obviously it's an unhappy customer on the other end that gets something that may not quite be right. But at the same time, shipping things back and forth is not good from a green energy standpoint either. So we want to make sure all of our products are done appropriately. And now as I find my way down to our basement, the exciting part of an old manufacturer making things in a traditional way is that we've invested tremendously in our efficiency as a business for materials. And the material aspect is such that when they talk about that in manufacturing, the amount of yield that you can get out of a product as you bring this raw material in, you want to make sure you can get as minimal waste as total possible. So when we invested in this automated CNC machine in our basement, we went from about a 70% yield on first pass with our raw materials up into the mid 90s. And that was all achieved with this machine, which does automated cutting of all of our fabrics. So it makes our waste that much less. And you can see here, it actually the different pieces of the bag, kind of like Tetris that plays the game down on the bottom, and then ultimately gives you your yield. And I think Tucker's got a yield there of 97.6%. And then finally, this last summer, we installed the sibling to our canvas cutter, and that ultimately is a leather cutting machine. And you can see that this one actually is vision-based because all hides are different. Every hide is going to have the marks and scars and that sort of thing on it. But just like we saw the tremendous change in yield, getting up into the 90% side of things, for this leather, which is a renewable resource, the cow that this came from, we want to try to use as much as we possibly can of the leather. So when the different pieces come off, they're actually nested right next to each other, and we're able to get minimal waste and minimal usage associated with it. And then finally, from a green and sustainability standpoint, we try to source all of our materials as locally as possible too, just as it was discussed with the Essentia project. Ultimately, these hides come from SB Foot Tannery, which is down in Red Wing, Minnesota. And when we went and visited SB Foot factory, about 60% of their leather that's produced is produced for their shoes, and 40% goes to other folks like us that purchase it. And what really was an interesting thing we discovered when we were there is that all of these cows actually are Midwest cows. And the reason we know that is that they hire refrigerated trucks to take the cows from the stockyards and that sort of thing after they're turning into food and whatnot. And then the hides are actually stored in a refrigerated truck and brought to SB Foot, which means that when they're processing, they don't have to wash all the salt off and create the pollutants and contaminants associated with going into the wastewater system. So there just are lots of things as a small business, as a small local employer, that when we know that we make a product that's meant to last a lifetime, when we know that we have a product that we have local labor going into and we're going to ship all over the world and that sort of thing, the more that we can focus on doing things the right way, the way that we can turn around and get good product out there from Duluth, Minnesota, that's what we try to do. And now I guess I'm up in our store, and that probably was about 5 minutes, and I'll answer any questions later about different things that we've done as our sustainability path continues. So thank you.
Actually going to shift to Dan. You have been leading a slightly big project here. In fact, one of our largest projects in this community with the Vision Northland and huge rebuild, a new hospital. Welcome. Love to hear more about the story of what's been happening with Essentia.
Thanks, Jodi, and appreciate the opportunity to present. When you can see my slides. Great. All right, so I've got a few slides here, just going through the process that we took at Essentia to, our sustainability process in the new building. When we first looked at this building, really wanting to take a look at, what's important to Essentia. And then also want to start off with a quote here. When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe, and really tying to that energy and embodied energy that, how everything is really tied together in what we're doing. Here at Essentia, we put together a multi-discipline group, including doctors, nurses, facility staff, others, to take a look at what are those sustainability features we want to highlight on this building and really strive for. And one thing that we decided early on as we looked through some of the different rating systems that are available out there is to really look at a sustainability program that was for Essentia. So our mission is we are here called to make a healthy difference in people's lives with the values of quality, hospitality, respect, joy, justice, stewardship, and teamwork. And when we look at those, and I'll get into the circle on the right here in just a second, we look at the aspects of sustainability, ecology, community, change, energy, wellness, resources, and water. And so we looked at all of those functions and looked at the rating systems. So you've got LEED, you've got WELL, RELI, sites, LBC, Fitwell, and really looking at how water efficiency, energy efficiency, and resources are tied to LEED, but yet LEED has a smaller view into community or wellness or other aspects, and really wanting to grab all of these aspects as part of our sustainability vision for this project. And so what we did is we looked at all of the rating systems and created a custom approach. And so we're not necessarily going for a specific LEED certification or a RELI certification, but really looking at all of these sustainability aspects and putting them into the design. So, and it wasn't that we decided to take a softer stance on the rating system or a rating system. We created our own rating system, and we held ourselves accountable to that rating system that we've put together. And as we put together that rating system, how is it supportive for healthy environments for our staff and patients? What about the place, connecting to the community, Lake Superior and the North Shore, and design and construction for future climate and performance improvements over time. And that connectivity and access for the community and our staff, and then education and data sharing for everyone. So as we looked at the rating system, some of the ones that I want to point out, for the Living Building Challenge, economy sourcing, where are we sourcing our materials from? How are we getting our materials to the site? And I'll touch on that in a little bit later. The LEED energy performance. We want this building to not use a lot of our patients' dollars to heat and cool it. We want to be very energy efficient. Bird collision, being on Lake Superior, being on a migratory bird route, we want to recognize and try to reduce bird strikes as much as possible. And then access to nature. How do we connect our staff, our patients to nature from our facility and connecting that to the environment? So for the interior, really looking at supporting in healthy environments. So looking at our ceilings, floors, wall protection, and selecting materials that have low VOC emissions and reducing and eliminating those off-gassing. So through the design process, we really looked through and made sure that the materials were LBC compliant and had those chemical ingredients that are not harmful to our staff, our patients, and the people who are in our facilities. On top of that, really looking at, nature is healing. Mental health and well-being of all of our building occupants really depends on, what's inside our facility. So making our facility look and feel like bringing the outdoors in. How do we create that environment to create that healthy healing? With direct access to outdoors. We've got a outdoor roof garden on our 9th level, extensive views to the outdoors, making sure all of our patients that are in our patient rooms have access to the views of Duluth and Lake Superior. And then focus on place. We really looked at B of the North Shore, the North Shore tie, and how do we tie that into our design and what the look and feel of the building is. So we really looked at the design and the indoor graphics to represent the North Shore. And so that sense of being and where you are in the location and really connected to the lake walk and the lake. We spent a lot of time looking at, the native flowers and the native trees and how do we incorporate that into the design and pictures that we'll be providing as part of the artwork in the facility. Focus on place, the material selection. When we sourced all of our material, we really looked at locally sourced. I think the LEED, some of the certification programs call for materials to be within 500 miles. Some of our biggest materials, which are steel, the curtain wall, and surprisingly ceiling tiles, those are our big ones. Structural steel, 95% of our steel is recycled steel. And we're able to, the 5% that was new steel, we were able to source that to the northern mine. So either northern Minnesota or northern Michigan. So really excited to see that. Our glass curtain wall was sourced by Vircon, which is 230 miles away in Owatonna, Minnesota. The other option there was China, and really wanting to have a Minnesota-made glass was critical to our project, and having that sense of being, and not having to all the carbon emissions by making those trips or having those deliveries made to Duluth, Minnesota from overseas. And the ceilings are made by USG, which is just 20 miles away in Cloquet. So really excited to see a lot of these materials and sourcing from that local community and supporting the local community as part of the construction. Future climate and performance over time. So looking at our energy use over time and being good stewards of our patients' dollars. We, at the early onset of the project, really looking at that integrated energy modeling for performance-based design. What kind of HVAC systems do we install? The lighting systems, obviously LED lighting systems, lighting control systems. And then at the back end in testing and commissioning all the systems to make sure that they are operating the way they were intended to. And then that continued commissioning to make sure that they continue to operate efficiently into the future. Water savings were a huge impact in wanting to make sure that we're not wasting our precious water resources as part of the building. So through the modeling, we were able to reduce our overall energy consumption by 24%, with a cost savings of 26%, a water reduction of 20%, and this is over the baseline in LEED. And exciting news, just recently we've made some tweaks to our systems and expecting this number to grow by 5 to 10% more. So we're through the design and through the installation, continuing to look for opportunities in these energy savings. Another exciting note is that we, even though we installed our own boiler systems, we are tied to the district hot water system in Duluth with the ability to backfeed the system. So working in cooperation with our major energy players in the city to be able to provide the most economical energy source possible, either through our boiler system or backfeeding the hot water system serving our hospital, and looking at how we can best use energy in the city of Duluth. So the next few slides I'll go through quickly, but the types of carbon buildings, we've got embodied carbons from manufacturing, transportation, installation of buildings, the operational carbons, emissions through building energy consumption. So the operational carbon, looking at that tie to the district energy system and trying to reduce the operational carbon throughout. The embodied carbon, how are materials getting to the site? What kind of materials are we using on site to make sure that that manufacturing process has reduced off-gassing to the environment? So things that we looked at here, so the structural design, we did early wind design studies to help reduce the amount of steel in the building. We were able to save, I don't have the exact number, but a few thousand tons of steel through the design of the building, through that wind study, and saved on steel. The concrete mix design, what is that off-gassing? So we had our engineers look at the mix design to ensure that that mix is not bad for the environment. We've had the wall that's shown in the picture here is actually 20 feet wide and 160 feet long. So we have massive concrete walls in the building that we were able to reduce the carbon off-gassing with that. And then construction waste management reduction. We targeted, we had our contractor target the waste. So all of our cardboard, glass, steel, we had separate bins set up for all of our waste. We're still working on the numbers as we're still working through our design or our construction process to see where we land, but we've been able to recycle and reuse probably 80% of our materials that have been brought to site. So we have a very good story, and there'll be more coming out on the recycling that McGough has done on the site as part of the construction. We had reuse of rock materials. So we blasted 44,000 cubic tons of rock from the site. All of that rock is planned to be reused as part of roadways and road construction. So Northland Constructors was on the site, pulled all the rock off, and will be using that on future road construction. Early on in the design, we did look at, how can we reuse that rock for the lake walk or for other aspects in Duluth. And because we were blasting, the rock coming off of the site was too small to reuse for the lake walk or other things besides the road beds. The other materials that we had was the reuse of construction materials, so steel. We separated all the steel and concrete on the site, and were able to recover 100% of the steel that was demolished on site. In addition to that, before construction happened, we worked with our manufacturers, so carpet manufacturers and other manufacturers, to pull our carpet and all the materials out of the areas that were being demolished, to have those materials recycled. So as I wrap up our presentation, really looking at, when we set up this project, we wanted to really look at the whole picture of sustainability and how we incorporate that into our design. And, as we start seeing the building erecting out of the ground and now working towards completion, we're really seeing our vision at the beginning of the project come to reality, and looking to measure all of these energy savings, reuse of materials, and recycling of materials throughout the project, to really showcase, what we've done, and to be able to say that we set forth sustainability points for the project and met all of those goals, even though we didn't go for a specific LEED or sustainability certification program. We have been tracking it as compared to LEED, and we are tracking right between a silver and gold as part of the project. But again, we aren't going for the actual certification. Would welcome any questions at the end of the presentation. I'll turn it over to you, Jodi.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And he knows as an energy geek, I think there's an incredible story when you think about public-private partnership and the interconnectedness now of this new system and the Duluth energy system, being able to, as Dan said, backfeed into that system. That actually is pretty incredible for how that can help facilitate continued energy efficiency changes, actually for our entire downtown. So. And one other thing that I would add that's outside of maybe the Vision North, but we'll have a chance to talk with Medina, and as she's worked not only at Maurices on a number of their sustainability things, but the idea of corporate responsibility. So when we go back to the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan, and we think about things like the food system, it's actually Essentia that, for example, supports within our neighborhood here a program called Power of Produce, which is helping kind of match and get healthy foods into the hands of our kids in this neighborhood by matching things like SNAP benefits for fruits and vegetables. And so it, without a doubt, it's an incredible story as it relates to the Vision Northland, but it's just a tip of the iceberg to some of the work that Essentia is doing. That brings us to our final presenter today, Medina Mercer with Maurices. And you're operating at a different scale as we think about things internationally, supply chains, productions, et cetera. We know Maurices, of course, from a very local perspective, kind of located between Chris and Dan. Here in Duluth. I know Maurices, for example, on their corporate responsibility side, has helped our organization with things like volunteer days, helping prepare an urban egg site for our neighborhood here, as well as helping do things like paint a resilience hub. But you're able to kind of, so let's turn it over to Medina.
All right, thank you so much, Jodi.
I don't know how I am going to follow both of those presentations. Some really cool information was shared. Just having the tour of where the bags are made, and just all that information that was shared about the new hospital. That was just great. So I am joining, as Jodi mentioned, from New York. I'm representing Maurices from afar here. As part of the sourcing team within product operations, I actually am based out of the New York design office. And as part of the design process, we heard earlier, that has a huge impact on how we're able to make better, more sustainable choices. As it comes down to product design, the materials that you're choosing, the methods of treatment to those materials, how things are put together, it has a major impact on your sustainability. So at Maurices, we are on the beginning of our sustainability journey, and really we are describing it as doing better, making better choices. And as we looked at how do we do better, really the first thing that we needed to do was investigate, where are our opportunities? Where are we making, probably some not so sustainable choices? And where do we potentially have the best opportunity to kind of do better? So the first step in that journey of identifying where we could do better is kind of looking at our biggest product areas and what waste in the design process, the production process is generated there. And really our biggest product area is denim. And in denim, in the production process, there's a lot of water that's used in the production process as you wash denim and create all those different looks that we love, from light to dark, the different destruction that can be added to denim. It actually does use quite a bit of water. And in addition to that, we also looked at where do we have potential to recycle as well in our design process and our product development as well. And focusing in on denim, one of the materials that has the greatest opportunity to offer potential to recycle is polyester. So in taking those two things together, the water savings and the recycling, we looked for, how can we partner with our suppliers in our supply chain and make better choices. And what rose to the top was actually using recycled polyester in our denim to achieve both water savings and less waste within the process. So with that said, the partner that we have really zeroed in on is Unify. They are a fiber manufacturer actually based in Greensboro, North Carolina. They produce recycled polyester from post-consumer bottle waste. So they actually collect post-consumer bottles that are just bound for landfills. They also have a program called Reprieve Our Ocean, which collects bottles that are bound to become waste in the ocean as well. So they collect those bottles, they process them in their factory in Greensboro, North Carolina. The bottles are first kind of washed, chopped up into flake. Then they actually add, and this is really important why we chose Reprieve as our partner here, they add a trademarked molecule, actually, that they own the rights to this chopped up flake, and then create little pellets from that. And the reason why Reprieve is traceable, and you can actually verify that Reprieve is used in product, is because they've added this trademark molecule that only they use. And that gives us the confidence to say, yes, the polyester that is used in our product is actually Reprieve. We can verify how many bottles it's actually come from. It's trackable. For some brands, that have counterfeit product that gets made from those brands. If they use Repreve polyester, it's easy to prove whether or not the product is counterfeit or not, because it has that trademark molecule that's actually part of it. So it has kind of a twofold purpose there, in being traceable, trackable, recycled polyester, but also there's a little bit of a brand integrity benefit there as well. So Repreve is just one recycled polyester fiber producer, but they are the largest, and they are the only one that has this traceability benefit to it. There are other recycled polyester providers, but it's not traceable, it's not trackable, and it hasn't been independently verified as far as how many plastic bottles are being used or recycled in the production of that. And it also hasn't been independently verified how much water is being saved as well. So that's why we have chosen Repreve as our partner. And again, denim is our biggest product area. It's what our customer comes to us for, she loves. So it's really where we're able to make the biggest impact. And as a retailer that has a global supply chain, we really wanted to think about, how can we make a local impact, but also how can we use our position with this global supply chain to have a global impact as well. So with that said, as far as the water savings and the recycling that we're able to support by using Repreve, we're in a really great position kind of choosing them as a partner because they have this third-party verification. Compared to virgin polyester that is, just sourced by taking petroleum oil, processing that into polyester, compared to that production process, the Repreve production process reduces energy consumption by 44%, reduces water consumption by 16%, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 29%. And that's comparing to virgin polyester. From the independent third-party verification service, HIG, they actually kind of rate a lot of different organizations on their carbon emissions and their performance there. Virgin polyester, if you compare Repreve on the HIG scale, the global warming score for Repreve is 42% lower than virgin polyester. And as far as generic recycled polyester, Repreve is actually 21% lower on that HIG global warming score. And so we're very confident in choosing them as a partner here on our journey as we seek to incorporate them more and improve the sustainability of our product. We have been using Repreve in our denim product for about 2 years now. We're very excited for this coming fall. That's actually the season that we're placing orders for right now, and will be in stores in September and October. With denim, we will have 55% of our assortment at this point will use Repreve polyester. That number has kind of climbed year over year. We're very excited about the full breadth of our denim assortment using Repreve polyester. And we've already saved 4 million recycled bottles since we have started using Repreve, and saved over 100,000 gallons of water. So that's up to this point. And we're only at 55% of our total denim assortment starting once we get to fall. 55% of our denim assortment will use Repreve. We have a goal of 100% by 2025. So if we've already reached 4 million recycled bottles and 100,000 gallons of water saved, you can imagine what the runway looks like ahead as we track to that 100% by 2025. And we are very, very confident that we will hit that number. Something that I mentioned again about traceability and transparency being key and integral to our journey. and why we've chosen very specifically Unify and Reprieve to be our partners here, is because we don't want to share any information that is incorrect. We want to make sure that any information that we share or any sustainability measures that we take are able to be independently verified, especially as we have this huge global supply chain and we're accountable to so many partners. We want to make sure that the partners that we're choosing on our journey and the information that they're able to provide to us is all trackable, all traceable, all able to be independently verified. So that's really key and central as we take these steps to becoming more sustainable. As denim is our largest product area, again, we can have the biggest impact there, and polyester being a key material that is able to be recycled or can use recycled materials, and actually it improves the hand feel of the product as well. We're really trying to kind of stay focused there, but we also sell a lot of knits as well, and that would be kind of our next area of focus other than denim. But for the time being, we're really trying to kind of stay focused there and make sure that we can make as big of an impact as possible before we move on to other areas. But everyone is super, super excited about this fall. If everyone is listening on the call, go out to Maurices, feel good about buying our M Jeans denim, our Everflex denim, and our Edgley denim. Actually, Everflex and Edgley are 100% all of the polyester in those two lines of our denim include Reprieve. The M Jeans are about at that 55%, somewhere between 40 and 55%. We do have some older product that we're starting to transition into Reprieve, and as we develop new denim lines, new denim product, all of the polyester in the denim, we're shifting to Reprieve so that we can hit that 100% by 2025 number.
Well, thank you. I find it fascinating as we talk with 3 different businesses, the idea of verification, whether it is Essentia looking at different certification systems, as you talk about special molecules and all of that to make sure that you can verify. And I kind of laugh because I think, Chris, some of your verification is the first time the power company paid you $10 for a month of power. There's lots of different ways of looking at that. But one theme that I'm hearing is really this idea, especially for businesses, this fact of integrity and needing to be make sure that what you're doing is not going to, I guess, fall afoul of the idea of greenwashing, that you can prove that the statement that you're making regarding your sustainability is accurate. It also, to me, just a bit of a reflection is just as we think of each of these companies, the power that you have to further influence what those materials are that are available to you. Using your purchasing power in that particular way. I want to invite questions for individuals. Please feel free to post into the chat. And I know we had gotten one questions about where else can there be an impact. And it was interesting, that question came right in when Medina started talking about knits as a next potential area. But I think it's a great question actually for each of our panelists. I loved, Medina, how you talked about this being a journey, that it is about where are we now and what's our next step? What's our next step? And if we can keep that focus collectively, we can make the change that we need to see. But I'd like to open it up to our panelists. When you think about the next step, that next area of impact, what are you thinking? Feel free to pop in.
So I can go in. So I guess from our standpoint, it's really our next steps are, what can we do? How do we match what we've done in this project on our other facilities and other new facilities, and how can we continue the momentum that we've started, really putting together the the energy efficiency and how we look at our buildings from a holistic standpoint versus just individual pieces, but how do we really impact the community with how we develop our properties, but then also, how do we operate our buildings? How do people access them? How do we engage with the community on our properties? So I think there's a lot of work that we can do. We do a lot of work with the community, but I think part of that is the messaging and how we continue those efforts.
Oh, I don't know if I hear you, Jodi. I guess I would answer. The next is just it's all the time. As we purchase another building and another team down the street a few months ago, trying to figure out how to replace the lights with their LED lights inside of their facility. As I hear air compressor fire in the background, I know that's on the back of my list, that I want to be able to use more pneumatics and have a more efficient compressing system, because that's stored energy. And as long as you don't have leaks in the system, that really is a neat way to be able to pass energy on. And people don't think about pneumatics in manufacturing, but you do a lot of powerful things with pneumatics. So there's just kind of a nonstop thing that's going on, where we're always trying to find the more efficient way to do things, and ultimately the new, more efficient from a green standpoint too. What we can do to feel better about our impact on things.
And just to tag on to that answer, I think, the next steps kind of reveal themselves as we continue to ask questions about how we can do better. Where are we inefficient? Where are we driving waste? And just continuing to kind of push the team collectively to ask those questions wherever they are in the product development cycle. And that's kind of how the answers reveal themselves to us.
We had a little problem with audio with you earlier, but it sounded like you were talking about Frost River growing to be an employer of about 50 individuals. Of course, when we think about Ascension, when we think about Maurices, those numbers are exponentially higher. As businesses, how do you work with your employees to help kind of grow this idea, the sustainability culture, not only in your business, but in that intersection between your business, your employees, and community?
I guess I'll answer first. One of the first things we really tried to focus on is just at each individual station, what people are doing for their efficiency. How much are they wasting? We keep track of all materials that are used in the manufacturing process and weigh it on the way out the door, to try to make sure that constantly you're trying to beat that number. You're trying to be more efficient and have less waste associated with things. So getting people to think about that, occupancy sensors inside of the building, so that when people are really in areas where we're using electricity, whereas when they're not, you don't have to turn the lights off anymore. The lights are turning off automatically, but just making sure that everyone is conscious all the time that they can make a difference, little bits, and knowing that they are part of the solution as to how we become more sustainable as a business and as a community.
And Dan, we also have a question as they talk about operations and VOC use in the chat there. So maybe if you can answer that along with whatever you were about to say, that'd be great. Yeah.
So similar to Chris, key performance indicators. We develop key performance indicators around certain aspects. From a sustainability, really looking to hold each other accountable for the numbers that we've developed through the design, and making sure we keep to those. And then also engagement, making sure our staff and employees are engaged with the process, and just continuing to have those conversations and asking for input and feedback from our staff to provide those changes. And if you're engaged, we found that our engaged staff really do make a difference and really guide our sustainability actions moving forward. To answer the question about the low VOCs and the VOC compounds for ongoing cleaning, our environmental services team has a list of products and they work through their products to make sure they're sustainable. I don't have the specifics around those, but I know that they have spent a lot of time looking at those materials to making sure that there's not a lot of high VOC compounds being used as part of the cleaning process. But then in addition to that, we also look at materials that may not need to use some of those products for cleaning. Obviously, there's some aspects in the hospital that need that higher level disinfectant, but I know our EVS team does review those on an annual basis, making sure that their products have low VOC, but also when you dump them down the drain or they get mixed in with our wastewater, they aren't impacting our streams and other areas. So great question.
We're going to give Medina the last word if she'd like to answer that question as to that intersection with employees.
Honestly, the employees are pushing us. They are pushing the leadership team to implement sustainability wherever we can, and really, craving more and more. It's an issue that is near and dear to so many of our hearts. So really kind of they're pushing for it. I would also like to say that tracking kind of what we're doing as far as waste and just kind of, again, Chris and I probably have some very similar answers because we're both in the manufacturing, process or side of the business. But tracking how much we develop and how much we adopt actually kind of helps us to see in our decision-making process how much waste we're actually creating just by the decisions that we're making. So that also helps keep employees, the team kind of conscious of making better choices, being more conscious about what they're developing. Because as you can imagine, as a large retailer, if we make a decision to, develop more than we need to, cancel things, it has reverberating effects at the factory, at the mill, and multiply that by, how many ever styles we have. So really making sure that we're tracking and can see how much we're actually developing versus wasting versus actually moving forward with is a big thing to just keep everyone conscious of the decisions that they're making.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming today. I really appreciated the conversation. I'm going to throw it back to Kristen for a couple of closing remarks as we're at our end of time. But thank you very much to our panelists. Kristen.
Yes, thank you so much to our speakers and facilitators for sharing their insights and expertise with us today. It was really awesome kind of seeing some of the projects that they were working on as well. We wanted to once again thank our sponsors for Earth Week and their dedication to an equitable and sustainable future. I will share that in just a second. And last but not least, thank you all for coming and participating in our Lunch and Learn webinar on Actions for Business. We hope to see you again in our other events and webinars this week. So here are some of those events. And I will drop in the chat the link to our Earth Week page so that you can take a look at those and register for any upcoming webinars or any other big events that we have that week. For folks interested in taking action, we encourage you to go online to the Duluth Citizens Climate Action Plan, where you'll find recommended actions and steps that will support the development of an equitable and sustainable future in Duluth. Join us in our day of climate action on Friday, April 22nd, and I will also share that in the chat.
That officially ends our presentation today. Thank you again to our speakers. We will actually keep this room open for the next 15 minutes. One thing that we do lose when we have virtual presentations compared to when we're all together is that opportunity to maybe talk out in the hall or talk out in the parking lot. And so the room is now yours for anybody that would like to hang around with our presenters can go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But if anybody would like to hang around, more than happy to chit chat.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Yeah, bye.